guys, Man Up Gear with your gamer goggles. We're at Gen Con 2016. I'm at the Forge Fathers booth, or Forge Father Games booth. It's a long show. And we're going to talk about everything Thon, which is got a neat little story to it. You were just telling me about how you kickstarted it, you pulled it down, and then you finished it on your own. So I think that's admirable. You know, everybody, especially with miniatures, Kickstarters seem to always run into some kind of delay. So when did you originally kickstart it?
March 2013 was when I first ran it. I'd worked on it for about almost a year at that point. And you know, one of the things I read was like, you know, you set the budget for about a third and you let the, you know, momentum carry you. And I got to about 60K. I needed closer to 90. And that was going to be all plastic injection molded, and so it's pretty steep. But you know, I didn't make the budget, and rather than just, you know, take I set the budget for 35. You know, rather than just take that 50 that I made, you know, I decided to cancel it, do it on my own rather than sit on that, you know, and either not deliver or run into problems. You know, there was pipelines I hadn't figured out yet.
So in 3 years, with a canceled Kickstarter, he managed to get all the money he needed and get the game out.
That's right.
So is it in major distribution then?
Not yet. So this is the first convention where I have the box set exactly the way I want it. You know, it's the Kickstarter model essentially, and so you know, I'm starting to reach out to distributors, having distributors come to me too, which is pretty cool.
Crazy what you did. Absolutely crazy. So, okay, what about the game world? What kind of setting is it for those that don't know about it?
Sure. So the high level is basically, you know, in the distant future, humanity is immortal, right? And you have, you could get together like 2 or more of these transhumans, and they form together to form a soul core, which is like a all-knowing, all-powerful sort of a gestalt intelligence, right? And then they create a new mutation of human, and that's called the LAR. And then so you play in the game as this LAR, this, you know, ultra super being that's mutated from, you know, a new evolution of human. And then you have these overlords and commanders, which are your leader units, and then each faction has specific, you know, capabilities, skills, and you know, drones that they're using to do a lot of the dirty work for them.
And I watched a video. I'm not sure what con you were at with it, but basically I gathered that the different levels of units have a different game factor in the game. Yeah. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute when we do a little bit of a demo. But basically, I gather they have basically different initiative levels. Is that correct?
Yeah. So one of the things I didn't like about a lot of the games was, you know, that you just kind of sit there and take it for a while, right? And I wanted it to be a lot more interactive. So each unit activates based on their initiative. So let's say that, you know, Chorus is one of the highest initiative characters, so he's like a 7, so he would go at 7. And then the Dautis, which is the Sun's hero, would go at 6. And then 5, 4, 3, 2, down to the drones, which are like 2s and 3s. So you know, I roll my shots at you, you roll your saves, and then you get to fire back with your character at 6 or whatever.
D6 system. I don't know why I thought I seem to remember a D10 for some reason. I had to double check. How many models aside usually?
The starter comes with 30 total, so you get about 15 aside. That's like skirmish size, very tactical, right? So some of them, you know, can only take 1 hit. Some of them are ultra resilient. They have armor plating, which can take hits, and then, you know, they can self-heal or self-replicate, and yeah.
Oh yeah, self-heal. They lay down too, which we'll get into all that. That was one of the neat things I saw in the video. Is like they get. Yeah, I'm gonna botch it. So anyway, how many factions are there right now?
Right now there's 3. So I have the 2 main factions, the Suns and the Alliance, and then the Highborn were gonna be a stretch goal, and I just finished them. So I have 3 complete factions now, and they all have their units and heavy units.
How many factions do you have in the works behind the scenes?
It's a big world, man. I've been working on it a long time, you know. So there's 10 from the core set that's all the different like home worlds that are under attack, and each one of those could easily be its own faction. And then there's a second phase of worlds that get invaded by the Suns.
So what made you choose it to be a traditional miniatures game instead of something like a hybrid board game?
You know, my background is video games. I've been making video games my whole life, and I love minis. And so I was like, hey, you know, I want to try something a little bit different. And you know, this is a project I've been working on a long time that I really love. So, you know, minis are cool. I like the hobby side, and you know, just thought I'd go for it.
So, working in the video game industry, does that mean there might be a Thon video game in the future?
It's certainly possible, and
It's just smiles.
I've been able to get the minis into Unreal Engine, and that's like the game engine that I use all the time. So it's definitely a possibility.
Wow. So anything you want to add to this before we jump into a demo?
Let's do it. All right, I'll take you through the basics of a game turn. So the first thing you do is orbital support. So both factions get an orbital drop that kind of represents their capital ship in orbit above the battlefield. The Suns can perform a strike, so you drop the blast template down. That costs resources. Resources is sort of the main, the name of the game, right? Objectives generate resources, so if you hold an objective, you're generating resources, you can continue to bombard your opponent. The Alliance can scanner sweep, so for example, the drones here can deploy barreled underground. And the only way to be seen is through a unit with detection, like this one, or the scanner sweep. So rather than bombard your target, you're going to sweep the area and they'll be visible. So next step is activation. You go from high to low. So Chorus over here is your high, he's at 7. All units get 2 actions. You can move and shoot, or charge and shoot, or shoot and charge, whatever, any order you want. So he activates first, and his bodyguards, they have a skill called Protect, so they'll join him, and they'll activate with him. So he could move and throw his hammer, which is a blast.
His hammer's insane.
Yeah, his hammer's badass. So it's based on his access stat, which is kind of like your hacking ability or your hard light. So he throws his hammer, and you can hit here. It's going to hit all those drones. The drones have a self-destruct, so if they get damaged, they explode into the blast as well. So if you chain them together, they're going to popcorn and explode all over the place. So let's just say he throws that, he hits with the 4, so you roll your shooting to their movement, so he's a shooting 7 to their 2, so he's going to hit on 2. So those guys are all going to get smoked. They explode, and that's the 7. He also has up to 3 additional abilities that he can take for free, and that's sort of like the magic power in the game, where they're calling down from this core that I was talking about earlier. So one of his abilities, his first ability, is he can boost any stat by 1. That's called Enhance. So if he wanted to increase the armor or the accuracy of another unit, he can boost them. He can also throw out a barrier, which is a hard light barrier. All the hard light in Thon is called Vircatecture. It's a virtual architecture. So he can throw that up if he's going to take fire and block those shots. So that's his 7. Oh, and his last ability, his ult, is basically all units get to re-roll the dice for the turn. So if you're going to get smoked that turn, then you want to re-roll everything. So they're charging up and powdering down constantly during the course of the game. So Dottis.
We have to pause a second.
Yep.
Start with Dottis. Okay. We're good again.
So Dottis is the Sun's hero. He activates at 6. His abilities are he can ping a single unit for 1 point within 24. He can increase the damage value of any of his units by 2. So for example, these Fireborn, they're 4s across the board. He can bump them up to a 6. So rather than having a railgun that's shooting a value of 4, it's shooting a 6. And that's important because all the Alliance units are only armor 3, so that doubles their value, and they're going to die if they take 1 hit rather than ticking down their hit points as usual. So Dottis can activate. He's got a furnace pack and a hammer. The hammer, he can burn a hit point to make it lethal, so he could jump in with the furnace pack, his jetpack, swing the hammer, and that comes down as a blast as well. So he could jump in, let's say here, throw the blast there, and that's lethal, so he's going to hit those guys. You roll 2 dice, 1 for each guy, and they're off, so those guys are dead.
And what did he need to hit? Only a 4 or 5?
He's a 6, and those are 5, so you would need 3+ to damage. It's basically always a 4. It's a 50-50 shot, and then just modified by a stat by like 1, usually 1. So that's a 6. 5s are dead, so they're gonna skip. These guys are normally 5s, but they activated with Chorus, so they're out. So then 5s are gone, so 4s. So the Sun's Fireborn are sort of the Marine equivalent for Thon. They get 2 actions, but they also have tactics, so they can increase their range, they can increase their damage, they can increase the squad range, so they can spread out a lot further, and also increase the cover value. That's a free action they can take at the start of the turn. They get 4 shots, so they have a railgun that shoots 4 dice. They have grenades. They're just basically these walking tanks, right? You can customize the different gear that they can take. So they could take scopes. They could take, better hacking equipment, additional grenades. So, one tactic is shoot all your weapons and then pop smoke, and you can't be targeted for the rest of that turn. So after 4, pretty much they're safe. This squad here is 4 dudes, 4 shots each, so you'd roll 16 railgun shots, and the key about the railgun is it has a skill called kill shot, so that's going to punch through cover and shields. A lot of the alliance units have shielding, but the railgun just punches right through that. So we'll roll up just 1 dude, his 4 to their 5, so he's going to only hit on 5-6, so he's going to miss completely. If you kitted him out with a scope, that's going to increase his shooting from 4 as high as 8, and so he'd be hitting on 2s instead. So that's one bonus to kitting your guys out for being more accurate. So let's say these guys went, that's 4s, and then the 3s. So the mannequin are basically the Alliance's servant drones. They've come under attack, and so they're converting all these servants into battlefield units. So in the future, this 3D printing is called flash production, so they just flash all these weapons onto them immediately, drop them down onto the battlefield as, popsicle sticks to get in the way. All of the Alliance units have a skill called Agile, so they can move, shoot, move, so they could move, and shoot also. So they would move 3 and then 3. And the mannequin get 3 dice as well, so that would be 15 out of there. If the drones were popped up from the detection, then they could attack the drones directly, so you could do 3, let's say 3 dice, 3 to 2 now, because the drone's only a 2, so they'll hit on a 3. So 2 hits, and then I would roll my saves. I'm a 2 to that value of 3, so now I need a 5-6 to save. So they fail, and when the drones die, they explode. There's nobody around, but if there was, the caustic shots also set stuff on fire. So if you could, if you go melee a drone and it explodes on you, you're going to be in trouble. You tick down each turn. So those are the 3s, and then the 2s would be the drones. The drones have a mortar shot. They can launch out a blast. They can barrel underground. And they also have a little pea shooter called a snub railgun, which rather than the 4 value of the Fireborn, theirs is only a 2. So they can shoot back at the mannequin there. So we'll do the one here by the objective. So he has 2 shots, but when they pop out from being covert underground, they'll always hit on a 2+ because it's a surprise attack. Okay. So they're going to hit with 2 of their 2s. The mannequins are 3s, so they get a 3+. So those guys will save, but let's say one fails his save and he goes down. On the mannequin's next activation, they have an ability called Reboot, which basically allows them to stitch together. And that's a 9+ on 2 dice. All of the skills are 2d6. So that's the basics of a single turn. After the 2s activate, anyone that was stunned or lowered down to initiative 1 would take theirs at 1. And then you start the next turn with the orbital support. And that's the game.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.